Good morning and welcome back to Rising. Hello, Jessica. How are you doing?
Doing well. Glad we're matching darker colors for fall. Fall officially starts when I start watching Gilmore Girls again. So it's fall, Robbie.
Dark colors for fall. Got to break out the pumpkin spice assorted flavors and coffees and such things is where we're headed, I believe.
Yeah, chai lattes, cozy sweaters. It's here.
All right, well, it's a big day, obviously, in the world of politics. This evening, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump will face off in a 90-minute debate on ABC News. It's an evening that many were skeptical would actually happen. Debates used to be the civic duty of the candidates, with maybe one or two highlights, but not anything more. But remember in June when a debate unraveled President Biden's attempts to regain the presidency, to have a second term, his mental acuity was exposed. It marked the beginning of the end of Biden's political career.
Now, we're dealing with a record number of eyeballs expected to watch Biden's handpicked predecessor and the 78-year-old GOP nominee. We will have more on that later in the show. We will also discuss the newly released body cam footage of Miami-Dade police forcibly handling Miami Dolphins star Tyreek Hill. We begin halfway around the world. Early this morning, Israel struck what it designated as a humanitarian zone in southern Gaza, saying it was also a command center for Hamas. At least more than a dozen people were killed, with reports of family disappearing. This in the afternoon, the Hamas-run health ministry said in a statement that hospitals had received a total of 19 bodies and more than 60 wounded people, some of whom were in serious condition. It did not say how many were men, women, or children. Rescuers were unable to reach a number of other victims still buried under sand and rubble or on roads, the ministry added. In a statement, the Israeli Defense Forces, or IDF, said aircraft had conducted a precise strike on a number of senior Hamas terrorists who were operating within a command and control center embedded inside the humanitarian area. Any hopes for a ceasefire appear to be dimming, and the lives of Israeli hostages are also at risk. So, Robbie, this comes at a time when there are intense protests all across Israel. It seems that people are not happy with the Netanyahu administration and how they've decided to handle this. There's now a resurgence in reporting around the Hannibal Directive, which is a common directive in the IDF that any soldier taken captive is more of a liability alive than dead. Now, this was reported back in July. Initially, I remember after October 7th, when we were getting numbers of the death toll, I have friends who have lived in the West Bank that were questioning how many of those were actually killed by Hamas and how many were killed by Israel. Now we have mainstream media in Israel again reporting that the Hannibal Directive was a factor in the death toll on October 7th. I'm sure that is adding to the numbers of people in the streets unhappy with Netanyahu.
Israel takes the position that this was a legitimate strike because there was Hamas operatives embedded in the humanitarian camp, but they have not so far answered questions about whether they warned the civilians there that this was about to happen. This is a place where civilians have told they will be safe. The difficult task of waging war against a terrorist organization embedded in civilian population is it's unfathomable, but it is resulting in just widespread devastation and death for the innocent Palestinian civilians, and it's really absolutely awful. We will see if the Biden administration has anything to say about this, or whether Kamala Harris or Donald Trump are grilled about it at the debate tonight. Right now, Israel is clearly the most important pressing foreign policy matter, given our support and our inability to get a peace, a lasting peace, or even a temporary ceasefire in place, even though the Biden administration has said that's what they want. And they'll say that, well, that's what Israel wants, and that's what the Palestinian authorities want. And then it will turn out that actually it's just what the U.S. wants. The Israel government wants Hamas to be destroyed, and Hamas wants to continue the fight unless it's guaranteed that it can survive and fight another day. And so there's not going to be a peace, and I don't think our leaders have been grilled on the fact that the participants are not following what the U.S. is participating in this conflict by funding Israel, but it is not. It has no ability to manage the outcome that the administration says they're actually in favor of.
Right. And now we're at a point in time in the war where we have so many accounts to point to where Netanyahu's been responsible for ending the ceasefire talks. And so the Biden administration wants a ceasefire. Kamala Harris obviously has called for a ceasefire and did so early on, so much so that people said she was splitting from the administration. But, others are saying it's not possible to have a ceasefire. And how could you when you have members of Hamas leadership that were supposed to be at the table that were killed in a precision strike, and you have Netanyahu seemingly unwilling to agree to any of the terms proposed for a ceasefire? And so it seems near impossible. But tonight on the debate stage, we might see the rhetoric divide between Trump and between Kamala Harris. Harris representing still an administration that is supposedly fighting for a ceasefire, and Donald Trump, who has said something quite different, which is that Israel should finish the job. So we actually might see them disagree on how to move forward in the Middle East. That's something that I'm going to have my eyes on, especially as we have the confirmed killing of a Turkish U.S. citizen in Gaza, or rather in the West Bank, who was fired at by the IDF. There was a group of protesters, including Americans, who were fired at by the IDF. So now that Israel moves into the West Bank, does finishing the job mean taking control of the West Bank in addition to Gaza? I think Donald Trump's going to have to answer for what finishing the job means, because you can't have such a vague response to such a widespread conflict in the Middle East. I hope that ABC correspondents will be asking precisely for answers on what the path forward is there, because I don't think anyone wants to see this devolve into a wider war in the Middle East, potentially with Russia involved.
I agree that he should be more specific. I finish the job means, as far as I know, but he should clarify it further. I agree with you. Finish the job, I think, means finish the job of taking out, destroying, crippling Hamas, not some occupation of the Palestinian areas of the Middle East. But of course, maybe that is what members of the Netanyahu government have in mind. Obviously, that's the criticism against the Israeli government, that this is a slow colonization process, and certainly some of that has occurred in the West Bank, which has been criticized and deserves criticism. But Harris has not said anything so far to indicate she has in my view, a remotely different stance on this issue from Joe Biden, that she's part of this administration. I mean, this is her fundamental task, is explaining, how the policies of Biden that she's been a part of being so unpopular for years, and she's been a part of it, and she's kind of renouncing some of them. She's certainly renouncing some of the things from her previous political iteration as a candidate in 2020. So she'll have a lot to answer for if she has listened to progressives and think this has gone on far enough, and there needs to be stronger efforts undertaken by U.S. advisors to constrain this war, to bring it to a close. We'll see if that's what she's up for doing. I don't think she's given any indication so far, but we'll see. More Rising right after this.